In 1787, the United States of America had a name, and it had a flag, yet many things were missing to make it a true nation. There was no president, there was no central court system, neither was there a U.S. Army or Navy. There was no Senate or House of Representatives, only a weak Congress. Congress could pass laws, but it could not enforce them. For instance, Congress could charge taxes to pay off war debts, but it had to rely on the goodwill of the states to pay up. People's loyalty to their state made it hard for them to think of themselves as Americans. During the Revolution, George Washington asked soldiers from New Jersey to swear loyalty to America. What an odd request. They said that New Jersey was their country. Loyalty to one's state was rooted in history. The 13 colonies had been settled at different times by different groups of people. Each state developed its own way of life, often with its own religion and customs. Strict Puritans had settled New England. Peace-loving Quakers founded Pennsylvania. Although the main language of the colonies was English, tens of thousands spoke German in Pennsylvania. Shopkeepers and fishermen thrived in New England, whereas the South was mainly agricultural. The Articles of Confederation held the states together well enough to fight the war, but afterward, each state was happy to go its own way again. Soldiers returned home, and each state got busy creating its own constitution and electing its own leaders. But what about being a country? Some leaders, like George Washington, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, wanted the United States to be a strong nation with a solid central government, one that would oversee all the states. These leaders were called nationalists. But other leaders wanted power to remain with the states, just as it did with the Articles of Confederation. The Articles promised that the states would remain sovereign. That meant each state was still its own boss. What about the Union? The Articles described the Union loosely as a league of friendship. How well did this government work? Not too well. By 1787, America's troubles could fill a long list. Some states charged fees on goods bought in other states, as if they were foreign countries. Lands west of the original 13 colonies were being settled, and disagreements broke out over which states controlled them. Continental money was all but worthless, so 7 states printed their own paper money, but it was no good outside of their boundaries. George Washington, back home in Virginia, grew alarmed at what was happening to his country. Congress is a half-starved, limping government, he complained, always moving on crutches and tottering at every step. Also, in 1786, a crisis broke out in western Massachusetts. Many poor farmers were losing their land because they couldn't pay their state's high taxes. Under Daniel Shays, a former Revolutionary War captain, a mob of 2,000 farmers decided to rebel. They marched to Springfield, armed with axes, pitchforks, and old muskets. The weak Congress couldn't put together an armed force, so Massachusetts sent in its own troops and stopped the rebellion. In the end, 4 men lay dead. Shays's rebellion shook the nation. Americans were killing Americans. "I am mortified beyond expression," said George Washington. Mortified means very, very embarrassed. Alexander Hamilton had this to say: "There is only one remedy, to call a convention of all the states, and the sooner the better." If the government wasn't made stronger, it could fall apart. Even Congress agreed that the Articles of Confederation needed changes. So it asked the states to elect delegates to attend a special meeting in Philadelphia in May of 1787. Newspapers called it the Grand Convention. No one called it a constitutional convention, of course, because who knew that a whole new constitution was about to be written?